There's an elite basketball benchmark that rarely gets discussed, largely because it's so elusive to achieve. Michael Jordan is in that club, joined by Luka Doncic, Dwyane Wade, and Cade Cunningham. In the entire span of professional basketball, only 4 athletes had ever reached it. On July 17th, Caitlin Clark became the 5th person to do it, and she managed to outperform the previous quartet. We are analyzing how she pulled that off alongside 17 additional milestones. The fever shattered that historic evening. Support Caitlin by dropping a comment saying Caitlin for MVP. Always so poised. Now, looking at the names we just highlighted before we cut to that interview, Jordan, Wade, Doncic, and Cunningham. There is now only one athlete among them, aside from Caitlin Clark, who accomplished the feat in under 30 minutes. Truly incredible. Before we dive into Clark's record-setting performance, let's look at Kelsey Mitchell, who also ignited the crowd. Seattle entered the arena with a defensive strategy designed to stifle the backcourt and force others to beat them. Mitchell saw through that plan and dismantled it in about 8 minutes. She started hot immediately, draining triples, finding her preferred spots on the wing, and by the end of the opening frame, she had already tallied 17 points. That isn't just a brief scoring burst, that represents the highest scoring single quarter in Fever franchise history. Not Tamika Catchings, nor any of the legendary stars who suited up for Indiana. Kelsey Mitchell did it on July 17th. She is sensational. Everything she contributes is remarkably high level. Definitely elite. One of the top players in the association. I honestly feel like every attempt she puts up is destined for the net. I realize she finished shooting 1-3 of 2-5 from the floor. But even with some difficult rim-outs during the fourth quarter, she easily could have hit 40 points. She possesses that potential every single night, making my job in the backcourt simple. And this wasn't just some lucky streak where everything happened to fall in. Seattle was forced to commit extra resources her way, which is precisely the issue, because the defensive coverage becomes fractured before Clark even touches the ball. You have a pair of guards capable of going off at any moment. When they feed off each other's energy, the scoreboard becomes a nightmare for the opposing team. This is the specific dynamic that should worry the entire league, not simply that Mitchell dropped 17, but that she achieved it as a secondary option. Now, Houston, a stellar defender, has to cover Caitlin Clark. Mitchell drives, maneuvers to the basket, and finishes. Misha Hines-Allen has entered the fray. She hadn't seen action in the previous pair of matchups. They need her production tonight with Boston sidelined. Clark with the bounce feed to Mitchell and the foul. This is the pace Indiana craves, pushing the rock. No whistle called. Mitchell lets it fly. Bang! It fits the trend we've seen all year. Mitchell has now drained at least 3 triples in 9 consecutive outings. Only Clark remains ahead of her, having strung together 10 such games back in 2024. This specific display marks the 14th time in her career she's reached 30 points, while extending her double-digit scoring run to 40 games. That kind of consistency isn't luck. It's a reliable backcourt leader who produces regardless of the opponent or the scoreboard. And here is the fact that is consistently ignored. Kelsey Mitchell currently holds the top spot for total points across the entire WNBA this season. Not just the Fever, the whole league. Among every roster, every star, and every highlight machine, Mitchell leads them all. So, if she is putting top these numbers while flying under the radar on national TV, what happens when Clark starts hitting her stride in the same contest? I really want to highlight and give props to Kelsey Mitchell for her remarkable achievements. 9 straight games over 20 points. Lisa, I call Kelsey the missile. Why? Because she's the fastest athlete in the WNBA, ball or no ball. But her off-ball movement is brilliant. I love when Caitlin has the rock. Caitlin will drive toward her and she'll flash backdoor. One of those perfect connections, consistently finding her cutting to the cup. Plus, her outside shooting is lethal. Looking at the pair, they account for 68 of the Fever's total points. Unreal. Mitchell's first quarter surge sets the standard for the rest of the night. By the final buzzer, she has etched her name into the Fever history books on 3 different occasions. The franchise record for points in a single frame, the second longest run of games with 3 trays, and a 3-0-point explosion to supplement the 13 she already had. While Mitchell dominated the perimeter, Indiana's interior crew had a very different task. They just needed to hold the line while their guards rewrote the history books upstairs. Who is fighting for a playoff spot? Seattle has struggled in close games, going 1-9, as Mitchell blows past Holston to knot it at 80. Off the Billings handoff, Mitchell shifts into high gear and scores. It was unexpected, as everyone remained captivated by Mitchell and Clark torching the nets. The sophomore is silently crafting her own legacy on the glass. Michaela Timson made her first career start that night, and the timing couldn't be better. Would have been more difficult, given Seattle's imposing height, with both Malonga and Pham dominating the paint throughout. This type of interior matchup is typically overwhelming for inexperienced players, particularly those making a debut start. Timson didn't flinch. She logged a career-best 32 minutes, recording 8 points, 9 boards, and a pair of steals. Yet, the most significant figure is this: 8 of her 9 total rebounds were secured on the offensive glass. That is an extraordinary stat line for any player, much less a second-year pro opening her first game against a league-leading front line. At first glance, those numbers don't necessarily jump off the page as record-breaking. They appear to be standard hustle statistics. However, a look at the Fever archives reveals a completely different narrative. Caitlin regarding KK's maiden start, what has it been like witnessing her growth and evolution as a teammate, especially facing a team like the Storm? Honestly, that was a really tough first start. They are a genuinely talented, tall, and athletic squad. They play with pace and thrive in transition. But she rose to the occasion. As she mentioned, she has put in the grind. She's always in the gym, eager to improve, and consistently maintains a coachable attitude. She trains constantly with Rob, our player development specialist. I'm just incredibly proud of her, and it's great to see the belief she has in her own game and the confidence the rest of us have in her. She's capable of making big plays. In my experience, she might be the most athletic teammate I've ever had. It is wonderful to see that potential finally manifest. Everyone recognizes her talent, but she is truly just getting started. I am excited to see how far she goes. Those 8 offensive boards in 1. Game placed Timson third on the all-time franchise leaderboard. That is a historic mark for any big who has manned that position for this organization since its inception. Offensive rebounds are more vital in this matchup than almost any other metric, because every single one effectively steals a possession away from a squad that holds a distinct size advantage. Since Seattle is much larger, every extra opportunity Indiana gains through an offensive rebound represents points that shouldn't mathematically be there. Timson created 8 such opportunities entirely on her own. Stephanie White made the pivotal choice to put her in the starting lineup, which was a major decision. Putting her out there against a front court like Seattle's shows the staff trusts her abilities well beyond her experience level, and she validated that faith by physically outperforming opponents with significantly more size and tenure, landing the 3rd most offensive rebounds ever. What's fascinating is how unique her stat sheet appears compared to stars like Mitchell or Clark. Nobody is going to categorize Timson's performance in a typical highlight reel material. There isn't a massive scoring outburst or a career-best night. She earned this milestone through pure hustle, diving for loose possessions and consistently outmaneuvering taller opponents to claim space on the court. It is a unique kind of achievement, yet it carries the same weight in the history books. She also provided Indiana with a defensive presence they desperately needed, rotating to guard both power forwards and centers depending on Seattle's rotation. This defensive versatility allowed the Fever to hold their own against Seattle's size without collapsing, even while a second-year player logged heavy minutes during her first starting assignment. One night, one statistical entry, and a legacy Timson will recount forever. With her and Mitchell both cementing their places in Fever lore, it was finally time to pivot to the performance that shattered the scoreboard. She's challenged. Clark recovers the ball midway through the shot clock near full. The logo. A step back, a sidestep, three-pointer from the wing. Swish. Caitlin Clark sets a new franchise record with 41 points, giving the Fever a three-point lead. With only 38 seconds remaining, Sattel calls for time. By the time Clark exited the game, she had achieved something almost ironic. She dismantled her own previously held record, substituting it with an even higher total. Clark entered the arena already holding the Fever's single-game scoring record, and she departed having surpassed her own benchmark. 45 points, the new standard for the organization, snatched away from none other than herself earlier this season. What makes this 4-5-point performance truly remarkable is the methodology. This wasn't merely a night of chucking long-range shots. Clark consistently drove to the charity stripe, converting 17 of 19 free throws, setting 2 new personal bests in the process. This illustrates her persistent focus on attacking the basket to force fouls rather than settling for jumpers, driving with such intensity against a Seattle squad known for its interior size shows an entirely new level of tenacity from her. 45 points is the most ever in a single game by any Fever athlete in club history. You're accustomed to record breaking, but what does this one represent? It's all right, I suppose. I don't really dwell on it. I'm fully aware of my own capabilities and what this group can achieve, and my priority is driving us towards success and becoming the premier team in the WNBA. We aren't quite at that level yet. So, it falls on me to push us toward that goal. We'll keep grinding. Well said. Thanks, Caitlin. Much appreciated. Amidst that offensive flurry, Clark also became the fastest player in WNBA history to reach 200 made career three-pointers. She hit that milestone in a mere 74 games. For most athletes, this takes several years. Clark managed it in roughly 2 seasons of action. That same barrage of perimeter shots elevated her to 5th on the Fever's all-time list for total made threes. A feat requiring years for most shooters, she accomplished in mere months. Regarding those 45 points across the entire league this year, it stands as the second highest point total, surpassed only by Marina Mabrey's 5 three-point explosion earlier this season. Yet, what truly sets Clark's performance apart from Mabrey's or anyone else's is this. Clark operates as a point guard, a role traditionally centered on facilitating rather than shooting. No player serving in that specific role throughout WNBA history had ever reached 45 points in a single contest. That isn't a scoring record burdened by caveats. It is a milestone that completely defies the conventional expectations of her position. Moreover, she accomplished this without logging heavy minutes. Clark was on the court for less than 30 minutes, meaning her 4-5-point haul. In that limited window is now the most ever recorded in a WNBA game by a player with such restricted playing time. Most 4-0-point outbursts in the sport come from stars who remain on the floor for 38, 40, or even more minutes, just to accumulate enough field goal attempts. Clark reached that mark significantly faster than your average starter. 6 milestones, 1 dominant performance, and that doesn't even account for the aspects of her statistical output that had nothing to do with her points. Somehow, dropping 45 wasn't even the most incredible part of Clark's July 17th outing. That's an impressive drive through the lane. Clark moves behind the back. Stephen hits the three-pointer. I've got a feeling about these defensive calls, Pat. It's a massive chance for Indiana. Clark has 15 points already. Wow. She 45 points would satisfy most players on any given night. Clark tacked on 10 assists as well. That specific detail is when this performance shifts from a personal career best into a legendary moment in WNBA lore. Because over 30 years of this league's existence, nobody had ever tallied at least 40 points and 10 assists in one game. Not once. Not Diana Taurasi, nor Sue Bird, nor Maya Moore, not a single soul. Consider why this feat is so exceedingly rare. When a backcourt player produces at that high of a volume, it usually necessitates holding on to the rock, leaving teammates without enough touches to build up their own stats. Scoring and distributing effectively are generally opposing goals, because the ball can't be in one set of hands for two different purposes simultaneously. Clark managed both. She claimed her 45 points and still managed to find teammates for 10 extra buckets, orchestrating the offense while acting as the primary finisher. We've witnessed entire WNBA matches that lacked this much offensive output. Clark responds. It's a genuine, high-scoring duel in Indy. Again, we see the poise and composure of Heidman. Clark hits a deep tray. Indiana is trying to feed Clark, but they cough it up. Johnson steals it. She had it torn away. Clark strips it from Johnson. Fever ball. And coincidentally, this marks Clark's fourth games featuring at least 30 points and 10 assists. Just take a moment to really digest that statistic. Every other athlete in the history of the WNBA has combined for just 4 of those performances. Not each, that is the total for the entire league's existence. Clark has personally matched that entire group. She is also extending her record of games with at least 20 points and 10 assists, a streak that seems to grow every time she plays. Now, consider her defensive impact, because Clark wasn't just piling up offensive production while ignoring the other side of the court. She ended with 4 steals and 2 blocks, one of which was on Jewel Lloyd, followed immediately by a clutch three-pointer on the subsequent possession. That isn't meaningless stat padding in a blowout, that is a pivotal moment in a contest where Seattle was desperately fighting to get back into it. These kinds of numbers, only Michael Jordan, Dwyane Wade, Luka Doncic, and Cade Cunningham have achieved this in the NBA. Always so composed. Now, those names we listed before the break. You have Jordan, Wade, Doncic, and Cunningham, but there is now only one individual on that list, along with Caitlin Clark, who accomplished that feat in under 30 minutes. That is incredible. Look at the full line. 45 points, 10 assists, 4 steals, and 2 blocks in one game. Just 4 people in basketball history across both the NBA and WNBA have ever posted such a stat line. Michael Jordan did it, as did Dwyane Wade, Luka Doncic, and Cade Cunningham. That was the complete list, and now Clark has added her name to it. Here is the part that truly stands out. Jordan, Wade, Doncic, and Cunningham each needed over 40 minutes of playing time to reach those figures. Clark pulled it off in under half an hour, and she was far from finished making history. I realize Caitlin is too humble to boast, but I can certainly speak to her incredible efficiency. She was unstoppable. Whether threading the needle with interior passes, notching 10 assists, is a tall order, or hitting step-back jumpers. We already know she can drain shots from the logo, but it was those fadeaways and step-backs that really impressed me. Her teammates recognized that she was in a rhythm, and they made the right move. They kept feeding the hot hand. She is such a selfless competitor. Her teammates are truly fortunate to have someone who can distribute the ball with such precision. It is wonderful that they kept finding her whenever she entered her zone. 45 points? Unbelievable. Truly a legendary night, tallying her total points. With the points she generated for others via assists, Clark was responsible for 67 points in a single performance. That tally surpasses the record held by Diana Taurasi since August 2006, when she accounted for 65. Clark surpassed a 2-decade-old milestone, cementing her legacy alongside Jordan, Doncic in the annals of history. With 18 records shattered, the Fever nearly squandered this victory whenever Clark hit the pine. The highlight reels often gloss over this, but Indiana would secure a comfortable advantage only to see it evaporate as soon as their star exited the court. Seattle immediately fought back, with Malonga and Pham dominating the interior at both ends. Every substitution period became a high-stakes struggle for Indiana, a fact Seattle exploited. Tensions escalated during the third as the Storm unleashed a surge that turned a blowout into a dogfight. Coach Stephanie White was forced to rely on her reserves to maintain composure, while Clark caught her breath. Defending Seattle's massive frontcourt proved daunting, and for several moments it appeared Indiana might crumble. With a lineup of Cunningham, Clark, Mitchell, Timson, and Billing, they attempted to feed Clark, but committed a costly error. Johnson swiped the ball away, snatching it from her grasp. Clark recovered, regained possession, and it stayed Fever Ball a brilliant defensive recovery. Monique Billings ensured the lead remained intact late in the fourth, recording a crucial block against Malonga near the rim. This pivotal stop prevented a narrow lead from sliding into a defeat, as Billings capped off the evening with a personal best 16 points. She was instrumental on both ends, not just as an offensive threat, but as an elite interior protector. Lexi Hull doesn't jump off the stat sheet in obvious ways, but she acts as the defensive glue, while the bench carries the load when Clark sits. This subtle contribution is often overlooked, and casual observers watching from home are usually too preoccupied with the score. Johnson swipes it. Clock under 10. Clark fires. Good. Again and again. Caitlin Clark is unstoppable. Seattle's entire scheme is predicated on making Clark fight for every single inch, throwing double team the moment she crosses the midcourt line. They hedge screens and apply full court pressure. Ultimately, it's futile once the game hangs in the balance, as she has spent the entire night successfully dismantling every defensive scheme thrown at her. The record-breaking performance converges with their desperate need to win. Clark and Mitchell combined for an incredible 75 points, establishing a new benchmark for a single-game duo in the Fever's history, a massive tally that had never been achieved before this July 17th. And another scoring duo record is now theirs as well, setting a new WNBA benchmark for the most 30-point performances by a duo. This milestone achievement wasn't even a topic of discussion until this year. Indiana managed to push through inconsistent periods because the identical backcourt tandem that rewrote the history books provided the poise needed down the stretch. In the moments that truly counted, Clark claimed 14 of the 18 records set tonight. This isn't just fabricated online chatter. The raw data is documented in the official statistics for all to verify. A title run and an MVP campaign are unfolding before our eyes, with a Fever squad proving they can overcome a lapse to carve out history. While legends like Jordan and Doncic required a full 40 minutes to hit those marks, Clark accomplished it in less than 30, even with a capped playing time. Imagine the possibilities once she is cleared for the full duration. Support Caitlin below by writing Caitlin for MVP in the chat. Make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and activate all alerts to stay updated on every big play. Tap the on-screen video to join us for our next coverage.